Good morning. We are delighted to introduce Dr. Ronda Kesler to our Challengers class. Together with partners, including both the Challengers and our wonderful Harvard Avenue Church, she is transforming life outcomes for McClure students and their families. Dr. Kesler is a guiding beacon for a miracle on 61st Street. Thank you, Dr. Kesler, for sharing your Sunday with us. We love you. By the way, there are numerous reading partners and volunteers at McClure in our classroom today. And we all love and support you in your mission to serve this underserved community.
Yes. Oh, I have to turn my mic on, I think. Yes. Here, I'll give that to somebody.
Keep that, yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, there it is.
Now you're on.
This is a first for me to have one of these. So, we're never too old to have firsts in our lives, are we? So I want to start out with a question for you. So you are the Challengers. How did that name come about? I love that name. Can somebody tell me?
Read the mission statement.
What's your mission statement?
It's in the mission statement. It's the mission statement at the end of
Okay. You have an assignment for this hour. Somebody needs to find the mission statement so that by the end, we can read it together. But I love that. You know, life is full of challenges. And McClure Elementary has, I think, more than its share. Not McClure itself, but the families that come to us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today. I think most of you, because so many of you serve over there, you know, with your physical bodies, you know about it, you served there, you've come to love that community, and I'm new to that community. I've been there now about 6 months, and I'm falling in love with it. It was a challenge. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got there. Have you had a chance to read my bio? And I apologize for it being so late. It's been a challenging week, and also, I apologize, but it didn't open, but I didn't let you know that it didn't open. So anyway, so all is well. So I have been in Tulsa Public since 2004, as you know, and I had started at McKinley as a principal. Well, I started as a teacher at Hamilton in North Tulsa, and it was a middle school back then. And 2 years, on my third year in, I became a behavior coach for the district for elementary, and that was a challenge, but it allowed me to be in a whole bunch of like 20 elementary schools. And they're all north side. And so during that time I got to interact with principals. And I thought, I learned what was a good principal and behaviors or choices that were not so great. And I felt like, as I prayed about it with my husband, that, you know, administration was an area that I'm okay at and wanted to develop. And so I did that while I was being a behavior coach. And then after I got my degree, then I applied. Since that was a district level position, it allowed me to go straight into principalship. And so I started at McKinley under Dr. Ballard. And while I was still under him, they moved me after my second year there to Kendall Whittier Elementary, which is right down by TU. Sandy got to work. I had the privilege of working with her for 3 years. She's a great sped teacher. And anyway, so about 13 or 14 years there, and then this spring they said, Rhonda, we're going to move you and Mr. Swinford to McClure. And there were a lot of challenges with the delivery of that to the community, the staff, etc. It was a growing experience for the leadership of TPS. The community was upset, but the Lord had told me in February, there's going to be a change. I just didn't know what it was. But you know how he kind of drops those things in your heart to kind of prep you. I don't know if you've had that experience or not, but so I didn't know what it was going to look like, and then when I was asked to move or told to move, that when you're a principal, you're just owned, right? The district just says you're going here, and there's not choice other than to say, okay, I'm resigning, or yes. And so I said yes, but it took some transition in my heart, because after 14 years at a single school, you learn to grow and love the community and their families, and you see multiple. We had kids that grew up there that now their kids were there, and so it's a very entrenched community. And so moving here, I learned very quickly that McClure has really struggled over the last 5 or so years. It's always been a difficult location. We have 28 schools that are low-income, 28 apartments that are low-income apartments that feed our school. But we also have the middle-income neighborhood right across the street. It brings kind of a nice balance, but it's a very high population of low, not just low income, but like 61st in Peoria. That's like the highest murder rate in the city, one of the highest crime rates in the city, high transiency, and so we have attendance that's it's an issue, and chronic attendance that's an issue, and just kids moving in and out, obviously. And but then we also, what comes with that is high trauma in the lives of children, because when you have a pre-K 4-year-old through an 11-year-old, life is done to them, right, based on the family situations. And so they have experienced a lot of what I've never experienced in my lifetime, would never want to have experienced in my lifetime, other than peripherally. And so anyway, we met, Curtis and I came over, I think it was probably the day before the last day of school last year, and the staff, the McClure staff, was stunned because they had already lost their principal mid-year, and so the assistant principal, I think many of you know her, Alexa Markarian, she was told that she was going to be moved to Patrick Henry, and the staff had an extremely difficult year. There was a lot of teachers that just said, I'm out with all the changes. Their social worker quit. So many people quit. Teachers would just come and say, done, mid-year. And so one of the outcomes of that is that 4th grade never had a teacher. They had about 30 subs. And so a lot of learning was lost in 4th grade. And the learning that did take place was not so great, in that the social emotional learning, kids learned that they had too much power beyond their age developmentally. They could drive out a teacher. They could drive out through their behavior an adult that was coming with a great heart to serve, but in their anger and in their rejection and in their abandonment and hurt, they started exercising that free will. And so it hurt them in that they didn't get the academics that they needed, but also, we as, well, our children, we know. How many of you have been parents? Okay, well, not everybody's always a parent. But you've had nieces or nephews if you haven't been a parent, and you know that children, the Lord says, train up a child in the way they should go. And then eventually they're going to return to it, because we're planting seeds and watering, and the Lord waters through life experiences. And so kids need boundaries, delivered in love, but firmness. Kindness, but firmness, right? That balance. And by learning that they had too much power, they lost some of that sense of safety and security that healthy adults bring. So they were empowered in the wrong way, but have discovered a need in another way, but because they've been empowered, they, 5th grade this year, they exercise their negativity, and you come to use it as a test, right? Do you have what it takes, adult, to love me no matter what I do, and to earn my respect? And that's what it's become about, is respect. If you gain these kids' respect, they will give you their heart and their best. But if they don't respect you, it's kind of miserable. So we had a teacher that had the right heart, was hired previously before I got there, and she'd been 30 years in business and worked for the mayor's office and different things, and these kids just ran over her. And about at the end of first quarter, she said, I'm not cut out for this. My heart was in the right place, but I don't have the skills because I didn't have the training, and I'm so sorry, but I need to go. Well, the Lord provided another teacher who, she's been a teacher, she's been a principal, she's been a superintendent, she's been working for Epic, and decided that she wanted to land and end her career serving kids. And I did not sugarcoat it. I let her know what she was getting into, and she's like, yeah. So anyway, she's there. And her partner teacher, the kids loved, but she, just this past week, she quit for a variety of reasons. And I had to tell these 5th graders on Friday afternoon that this teacher that they loved and respected quit. And you could have just, it was palpable, the sadness, then kind of the anger, then the rejection, and they were just ticked and hurt. And I had brought my leadership team in and said, let's process through how we're going to deliver this news to the kids. And so they were all there. There was about 10 adults there. It was a wraparound, we love you, we are here. We laid out a process to help them in their grieving. And some cried, some you could see the fists just get balled up. They were just so mad because they felt betrayed by this teacher because she gave up on them in their heads, even though it was just life circumstances. And so we have a semester to walk out with them. I have this week's a little sketchy with the subs, but then I have a sub that they love, and she loves them for about 3 weeks, and it takes a good 3 to 4 weeks to hire somebody, and we think we have someone to hire. Going to finalize that interview on Tuesday, but I would love it if you would pray for this group of kids. While praying for them this week, when this happened, I was on my way to school and I was praying, and I just had this thought. It came across really strong, that the enemy of our souls has targeted this group of kids, these 56 kids, and he's trying to destroy their lives. But we know that he tries to destroy our lives. He tries to come and steal, kill, and destroy. And I just, it's like, nope, you can't have them. You can't have them. And just the teacher that is there, she's a strong believer, and she anoints her chairs, her desks every day with oil and prays over these kids. One of the neat things about McClure is that the Lord has gathered a lot of believers, yourselves included, that he is raising up to pray and cover these kids and their families and change their lives, change the trajectory of their lives. And to go back to where I began, so when Curtis and I went, I said, all right, guys, we had just gotten moved, their principal or assistant principal had just gotten moved, everybody was just kind of, and I said, let's just be real. right? We're in this really hard emotional place. But I want you to think about our kids, and the ones that came were the ones that were staying for this year. And so what do you want this to look like? What's your hope for these kids? And then how do you want next year to look like in terms of what do we need to make that hope a reality? And two of the things that they talked about was, can you please hire people and get fully staffed? Because when there's gaps, I had to hire 14 teachers. That's half, 50%. And most of those were actual classroom teachers, and we got full. So the Lord allowed me to hire, and so we started with the full staff. And the second thing was, we need discipline support. When you have 14 subs in and out, things happen in a classroom, like I described. And so Curtis and I have structured our discipline process to be very specific and extremely supportive to our teachers. And so that overall is going well, and as we have come into the school, we've had to become believable, if that makes sense. And so our suspension rate has gone up because we have needed to have these conversations with both the kids and their parents and say, we're not doing this year. This is not who we are. This is not who you are. This is not who your child is. And we're partners, mom and dad, if there's a both. And it's really beginning to turn things around. And so now, instead of just kind of this rampant hit and miss with discipline, we now have it down to a specific group of kids who just need a lot of added support because they've had tremendous amounts of trauma in their lives. And so that's how Curtis and I entered in to McClure this year. And then I began a trajectory of finding out, okay, who's our community of supports and our partners in ed. And I very quickly found out about Tammy and Janet, and because they were up there, they're like, what are we doing? How are we doing this? What's our organization? Which I loved. I need assertiveness. I need to see faces. It's been very helpful to know that they're, feet on the ground there, and that they're reliable, and I can count on them, which means you all. So I want to just kind of let you know a little bit more of who we are. We have 399 kids. Every day that goes up or down. Approximately 206 are male and 193 are female. Our attendance right now is 89.5, which is up 3% from this time last year, and we're working really hard on that. Our chronic attendance, 41, almost 42%. That's actually down about 8%, and we have a process in place for calling parents and letters and all that kind of thing. So each percent represents several kids. So what chronic attendance means is that of the kids that do come, they are absent 10 or more days of the time that we've been in school, or 10% of the time that they've been in school up to this point. When they hit 16 actual days, they're chronic attendance for the whole year, because there's only about 160 days in a school year. I have 29 teaching staff, and that includes counselor, dean, admin, class teachers, etc., and about 14 support staff, which are TAs. And I have TAs in pre-K and in kindergarten. We have what's called a reflection room, and that's part of our discipline system. When we have kids that get referrals as admin and our dean handles them, then they go into what's called the reflection room, and we have a TA who processes through this questionnaire. What did I do? Why did I do it? We have a thing called Toolbox, which we're teaching kids these life skills and tools, and it's like, what tool could I have used, and then what tool will I try to use next time that I'm encountering this situation. So that's one of our support staff, and I have a TA that we've just added into our fine arts arena, and she's doing some classes with art because I don't have an art teacher. I have a music and a PE, but I don't have art, and some of our kids are phenomenally gifted in art. So our leadership team, me, Curtis, Kelly Cates, you guys, any of you know Kelly? She's been around for like 15 years. She's fantastic. Erica Carter's our counselor. Taryn had been a clerk. She's now my secretary. Sylvia Rocha came over from Kendall Whittier, and she's bilingual, and so she's really opened up doors for our bilingual families, which are about 75 or 80 kids. And Kim Scott is our, well, it says parent. She is a parent. She's also my reflection room teacher. So we have my title budget, you can see up here, is these are funds that come from the federal government through the states to the districts, and the district, based on student enrollment, determines how much each school gets per student. And then we have different buckets that we can spend from those title dollars that the leadership team decides. So we have tutoring that's after school, professional learning, which is, I'm going to be bringing in a person who's trained in giving trauma training for my staff. Many of them have trauma. Many of us here have had trauma. It helps us to see where we are at in our own trauma scale and dealings, but also helps us to have some practical tools with how to help kids in trauma. We have Toolbox, which is what I already explained, these 12 skills, life skills. And then for personnel, that was one of the things that I've spent a lot of money on, is personnel, because you're allowed to have for, kindergarten through second grade, you're allowed to have up to 28 kids per classroom. When you have kids from trauma and high behaviors, that's way too many. And and then for third, fourth, and fifth, you can have up to 34 kids in a classroom. That's crazy high. And so I have hired 3 teachers out of that, plus some TAs to support the kindergarten classes, and have a reflection teacher. I also hired my dean out of dollars. So we have, that's where we've put a lot of our money, and there's additional pots of money that have helped to pay for those as well. So our goals, you may or may not know what these are, and I'm not going to go into detail, but writer's workshop, response to intervention, those are small groups that are very skill-based that teachers meet with on a daily basis. Writer's workshop is just, it's a designated time to teach kids how to write. Well, if they struggle with reading, writing is also a struggle, but writing very much reinforces reading. And then just regular reading groups and grade level teaching, of course, and then math. We also have different platforms, computer platforms, that the district has stated that the kids are required to do, and it meets them individually where they are and allows them to work through the program. Our social emotional learning, our counselor, I had made part of our specials rotation first semester, and so she did regular guidance classes with them to teach them the tools that we've talked about, and other life skills. We have a family and children's therapist and caseworker on site. We provide them a room. It's like a subcontract type thing, only it's not really a contract. We provide them the space and they do their services, but they also work with us as a team for wraparound services for our kids. But they are not part of TPS, if that makes sense. We were able to be fully staffed until now, but I think that's going to be corrected, I hope. Discipline support is, we do ongoing training for our staff, because that's not a one and done thing. That's That's a process. We offer, the reflection room. Sorry about that misspelling. And then our toolbox. So, fall proficiency levels. We are an F school by the State Department. Last spring, I didn't put last spring's on there, but our fall, we do this, it's called Measurement of Academic Progress. It's a test that we do 3 times a year. We are in the process of doing winter. So these are the fall scores, and this is the whole school. So K-5, our proficiency in reading was about 25%. You can see these 22 in math. And then for kids that were proficient in both, it's only about 15%. You can see we have a long, long way to go. So we'll have more info in a few weeks. So I told you the 5th grade story. I want to add to it. So at this conference that I was at a conference through my church this last week in the evenings, and yesterday it ended, but one of the speakers told a story about Kansas City schools. They were a group much like this, and they were working with Kansas City Public Schools, and I think in Kansas City, Kansas. And what they discovered, what the pastor had done some research and discovered, that 5th grade reading scores equate to how big they're going to build prisons.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. 5th grade reading scores, and this is in Kansas City, Kansas. 5th grade reading scores equated to how big they needed to build prisons.
Anyway, so then they came up as a church group. They kind of figured out, how can we help attack this deficit? Obviously it starts little, with the littles. I don't know if it was Janet or Tammy, but had talked about, how many of you are in Reading Partners right now? Like, how many of you serve in Reading Partners? Several of you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Reading Partners is an organization that comes into the school that works with kids that we identify that are low readers, and they work with them twice a week for about 45 minutes each to an hour. And sometimes those kids might get 2 people, one, for each session, or it might be the same person. And when it's the same person, well, either way, it often is not just about reading, it's about mentorship, right? Building those relationships, because if the relationships are not intact, learning is significantly lowered in elementary. So anyway, they decided to work with the schools to go into the after-school space. We have that opportunity. We have Youth at Heart, which is a 21st century grant. And part of what they do is they're there for 2 hours. Half the first hour is typically tutoring or homework helps, and the second hour is usually enrichment and of some sort. So I've talked to Miss Bonner, and she's like, yeah, we can, if you have people that want to come in and tutor, we are open for that. And so it'll take a little organization on my part, but worth doing, and especially targeting 5th grade right now to try and get some intervention and some additional social emotional supports. But any age group leading up to 5th grade, if we don't do the interventions at the low grades, it's going to be much tougher at the upper grades. But it was a startling statistic, one that made me very sad and very, very concerned, for our school, obviously. One of the scriptures that has stuck out, that in part of my conference, but something that's always been near and dear to my heart is, in James. Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. And first of all, I just want to commend you all, because of how well, amazingly, you have served McClure. And if not McClure, I know that you guys serve in other capacities, and we all have different capacities in which we can serve based on health and lots of other things, and finances and different things. But these are some of the things that you guys do, which is quite miraculous. So our clothes closet. I don't know exactly, you want to come up and talk a little bit about how you do your clothes closet? But I will tell you, it's coats, it's belts, it's underwear and gloves and hats and everything that a kiddo needs, uniforms. I'm just wondering how you collect all that.
It's an interesting story. Many of you know about the Assistance League in Tulsa, and they have a retail shop called Bargains. When people donate items to Bargains, they cull through them, price them, and everything that's sold in that shop, the profits go to buy uniforms for Tulsa Public School kids in need. And at the beginning of the year in fall, there's about 40 or 50 kids from designated sites who are invited to have a shopping day. Janet and I have had such fun doing this with the kids. They come on a school bus. One of the questions they ask is, are the clothes going to be new? Think about it. So they have a little shopping cart and volunteers, and we take them through their little shopping area, and they get fitted for shoes. They put their shoes on a little foot sizer, and they get to pick out shoes and socks, and then they have their little grocery cart, and we take them around to get shirts, pants, or skirts, a winter coat, hat, gloves, after school clothes,